In this video, we're going to take a look at a function called DSUM. The D stands for database. And I don't have any data here, so we're going to go get some. And the place we're going to get it is from Excel's help. So let's go and type in DSUM here. And we want help on the DSUM function. So we're going to select this. And it gives us an example here. And I'm going to use this example. So we have some data here, and I am going to copy the data. It goes down to the last row. It has $45 at the bottom. And I'm going to do Control-C to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do a Control-V. Okay. And it pasted everything in nicely for me. It even did some bolding. Now, I don't really need equals in front of Apple there. Let's just get rid of that, and we'll just type pair here. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. We have a data table or database. It's not really a database, but these are the database functions. That's what the D stands for in DSUM. And so this is what we'll call our database or our table. And up here is where we're going to put the rules for selecting specific items out of the table. And all of the stuff that's up here is basically an advanced filter. So if you don't know how advanced filters work, there's a video on advanced filters that I have that you should check out. So the way advanced filters basically work is you've got a column up here that matches the column names down here, and then underneath you put your rules. Okay. So before we get into the DSUM function though, we're going to look at an example using another function that we already know how to do, just the sum. And let's label it sum of profit. Okay. And so I'm going to just sum up everything that's here in the profit column. Let's make this look a little nicer here so that when we put our formula in column J, we can still see our label. So let's go to column J here, and let's go on our Home tab, and let's go to our Auto Sum button over here and choose the sum function. And it wants to know what I want to sum. And I could type the range in there, or I can just grab the mouse and drag it over the range that I want, and it automatically puts E6 to E11 there, and then hit the enter key, and it tells me that the sum of those numbers was $503. And a nice way to double check on this is to drag the mouse over these, and anytime you do any selection in Excel, Excel will always give you the average of that selection. It will give you the count of numbers that are in that selection, and it will give you the sum of the numbers in that selection. So you can kind of double check it down here, and it is doing the correct thing. Okay, but that sums everything. And sometimes you don't want everything. Sometimes you want to look at a little more detail. And the example we're going to look at first is summing the profit just for the apple tree. So I would like it to look at this column here. If the word apple is there, then add the number that's over here. If the word apple is not there, then do not add the number over here. So we've got apple on row 6, row 9, and row 11. So I wanted to add the 105 and the 75, which would be 180, and then the 45, which would give us 225. Okay, so I'm basically doing a sum function, but I'm putting some restrictions on it, and it's a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to put a little label over here that says sum of apple tree profit. Okay, and we're going to right align that as well. Now we need to do the DSUM function, and that is on the, well, it should be on the formulas tab, but you can look at every single one of these categories here, and you won't find DSUM, including this category right here. So for some reason Microsoft left that off. So what you have to do with the DSUM, you can just type it in, but you can also go over here and click on this Insert Function button, little FX on the left side of the ribbon. And we have a list of categories here which pretty much match the categories that are up here, except for they do not have a database category there. So we're going to choose database, And notice one thing about the database functions, they all have the name of another function with the letter D on the front. So they basically do the same thing as some other function that we've got in Excel, but they're going to do a little bit of filtering first before they apply the function. So the one we want is DSUM. Let's click on OK. And it wants to know where is your database or table. And our database is right here. Make sure you include the column headings. You always have to do that when you're doing database stuff. And then it wants to know what field is it that you want to add up. And there's two ways to do this. This is column 5 of my table. So I can just put the number 5 in here. I didn't want that to go in there. Let's just put a 5 there. The other way is to actually put the word profit, the column heading that's at the top of the column. And so far so good. That's pretty straightforward. And now I want to tell it what my criteria is. Well, my criteria is to look in the tree column and just get apple. And that's where this criteria range up here comes in. I've got actually, 4 rules put together on 2 rows, but all I'm going to do is just select this part. So I'm basically ignoring the part that I do not select. So all I'm saying here is if there's apple in the tree column, then add the number in the 5th column of my database. Okay, so here's my database. This says column 5, and this says only do it if apple is in the tree column. Let's click on OK. We said we should get 225, and we do. It doesn't format for us, but that's an easy thing to fix. Okay, let's look at a couple of other things here. If I click on this and want to edit it, there's a couple ways I can edit it. I can double click here and just edit it in the cell. Or I can click on the cell and go up here and edit the formula as well. And the other thing I can do is while I'm in the cell, I can go click on the FX, not that one. Click on this FX button here to the left of the formula bar. And it'll bring up all of my stuff for me. And I'm going to change the third function argument. I want to put the name of the column in there. And if you got a wide table with a lot of columns in it, you might not want to count which column it is. You might just want to type the name of it in. So I'm going to tab out of there. And watch what happens when I do that. Excel puts quotation marks around the word profit, just like it does in some other instances. And that is what you have to have there. If I click on OK, it should still work, and I should get 225. Okay. Now, if you're typing that in yourself, however, let's go up here and just delete the quotation marks around the word profit. If you don't have quotation marks around it, then it assumes that what you're referring to is one of two things. You're either referring to a range of cells somewhere, and there is no range or cell called profit, or it assumes that that is the name of a function, and there is no function called profit. So when I hit the Enter key right now, I get an error message. And when you see the name error message, it usually means one of two things. You forgot quotation marks, or you misspelled the name of a function or a range. Okay, in this case, it means I forgot the quotation marks. So we'll go in and put the quotation marks in, and now everything should be back to working the way that it's supposed to be. Okay. Another thing, let's go back in here again, and actually I think I'll just hit undo a couple of times, so I want to get the number 5 back in there. Okay, and now I can click someplace else. Okay. Number 5 refers to the column in the table. This is the 5th column in the table. It's also the 5th column in my spreadsheet, but if I take this and move it, it's still the 5th column of the table. And see something nice Excel did for us here. When I move that, it changed my range to F11 to J17, which is now where this is. It's still column 5, okay, even though I'm in column J. It's the 5th column of the table itself. Let's undo that and put it back where it was originally. Okay, another thing that can make your life easier when you're doing things like this, this is a really small table. You wouldn't even need to use functions to figure out the stuff in this table. But you might have a table with thousands of rows in it. And rather than have to type in the range every time and, remember what the upper left corner and lower right corner are, or actually have to drag your mouse over thousands of rows, the smart way to do this is just to give this a name. So select everything from the word tree in A5 down to the 45 in E11, and we're going to type a name up here, tree table, okay? And the only thing I want you to notice about that is there's no space between tree and table. You're not allowed to put spaces in names. You can name any range on the spreadsheet that you want to, and a lot of times that makes your life a lot easier. The rules are that this has to begin with a letter. It can only be made up of letters and digits and possibly underscores. It's not case sensitive. Usually what I just do is I just put a word or words up there, and don't put any spaces in. As long as you remember that, you'll be good as far as Excel is concerned. So I'm going to hit the enter key. And now anytime I use tree table, it's going to refer to this range right here. As a matter of fact, if I drag my mouse over that range again, the name will show up here in the name box. You see, if I pause the mouse there, the name box appears in a little tooltip underneath the box. Okay, now I can go over here and we'll edit it using the dialog box. And I can say my database, instead of A5 to A11, is the tree table. And hit enter or click on OK, and we should get exactly the same thing that we did before. Okay. You can also do the same thing with your criteria range, but if you're going to be changing the criteria range, which is what I'm going to be doing here in a minute, then that's not quite as useful. So let's go in here and let's click on our insert function box again. And this time let's change the criteria. So I can either drag the mouse over it and hit delete, or I can click on the arrow here and drag my mouse over this now. And this means I want all apple trees. If you have rules on the same row, they all must be true in order to select the record from your database table down here. So first of all, I must have apple in the tree column. Secondly, the height must be greater than 10. And because I have another rule for height on the same row, both of these have to be true. It has to be less than 16. So if we look at our apple trees now, we've got an 18-footer, which is not in that range. We've got a 14-footer, which is in that range. We've got an 8-footer that is not. So basically, it's just going to it should give us $75 if we choose that as our criteria range. And then we can go back here and hit the down arrow and click on OK. And we get $75, which is just the profit on this one tree right here. Okay. So when you have a criteria range here, all of the rules on the same row are basically connected by the word and, which means they all have to be true. And if you have more than one condition for a given column, like we do here with the height column, then you can't put two conditions in one cell. So you have to create another column with the same column heading and then put the rule underneath that. Now, if you have rules on separate rows, it's as if each row is connected by the word or. So this row means apple trees between 10 and 16 feet. This row means just pear trees, no other restrictions are on it because all the other cells are blank. Okay, now let's go back and let's try this with one more rule. So let's click on our rule here and then click on the FX here. And the database is the same. The field is still the same. My criteria range this time, though, let's click on the arrow here. And let's drag our mouse over those three rows and hit the arrow and click on OK. And now it's looking for apple trees that are within the height range, which is going to be this row right here. And then any pear tree. So I'm going to get this row and this row. And if you add 96 and 75 up, you get 171. If you add 77 onto that, you get 248. So, and you can add as many rules here as you want to, and it will try to match this one. If it doesn't work, it'll try this one. If it doesn't work, it'll try the next one. It'll keep on doing it until it runs out of rows that have rules in your criteria range. So that's how the DSUM works. It's like the sum function, but it lets you basically do some filtering before you apply the sum function.